Mā te whakarongo, mā te kōrero, mā te nākau, mā te wārura, mā te manaki mai, mā te manaki atu, ka puawai te taumatanga, hei mori. Through listening, through talking, from the heart, from the spirit, through giving and receiving respect, understanding will bloom. This is the essence of life. Welcome along to the council meeting on Wednesday the 6th of March, not the 9th of March, as I said in my video yesterday. I think I've turned the leap year into March as well. And we'll take it away in 3 days. We'll kick off with the standard housekeeping bits and bobs. So, toilets are outside that door on the right. If we need to evacuate, please go down the stairs onto this car park in Space Street. And an earthquake drop, cover and hold. If we can please ensure our phones are on silent mode. And just a reminder, these proceedings are being recorded for the purpose of live video, both live streaming and downloading. So by remaining in this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed for viewing by the public. We've got quite a full agenda today and quite a lot of things to get through, so I'm probably going to be a little bit more rushy than I normally am to try and get everything into today with people coming in at certain times. So with that being said, I will get on with the meeting and I'll call for apologies. I think we've got Councillor O'Brien and Granny on Teams, or trying to come in on Teams. Quite hear you. Any apologies? No. Any leave of absence coming up?
Yeah, from the 16th of May to the 23rd of May.
That sounds the 23rd of May.
Yeah, I'll be absent on the council meeting on the 1st of May.
1st of May.
The 6th to 19th of July. So I'll be absent on the 17th.
Someone like to move that those be accepted? Councillor Bakerai, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Do we have any conflict of interest for any items on the agenda today? There being none, I don't think we've got any extraordinary urgent items, so I'll move on to the confirmation of the council minutes from the 24th of January at page 6 and the extraordinary meeting on the 14th of February on page 16. Is there any concerns with those minutes? Someone in a position to move that they're correct? Councillor Spraggan, Councillor Keast. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? That's carried. We did have someone wanting to speak of public participation, but they have advised us that they're unable to come in. So I will now move to our first report, which is 7.1, Review of Rates Remission Decision 10 Rada Street, Stewart Island. Page 17 of your agenda. Welcome, Shelley.
Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to respond to a ratepayer's request for a decision that staff have made in relation to remission of rates for property at 10 Martin Street on Stewart Island. The report outlines the main points that we've considered in terms of whether or not we should provide remission. Just one thing to clarify, I think, is that this remission isn't in relation to an increase in rates that was caused by a budget change. This remission is a request in relation to a change in ownership of the property. So typically, if you own one property and you have a couple of vacant sections and you're using them all as one, we will only charge capital value rates and any service rates on the vacant sections, and that's what's called contiguous property or rating the unit as part of a rating unit in common ownership under section 20 of the Rating Act. And so in this instance, the property used to be rated like that, which meant to only get capital value rates in the wastewater rate. When the property was sold, it no longer applied to that category, so it wasn't owned by the same person, so it wasn't being used for the same purpose by that same person. So that category no longer applied. So that meant that we had to put full rates on the property. So that meant all the introduction of all the fixed charges for the community board, the roading rate, the general rate, UAGC I should call it. So that's essentially what's occurred in this property. A new person bought it, and so full rates are applicable. So we had a look at the policy in terms of the ratepayer's request to consider, And then that policy is about whether there's exceptional circumstances that are applying this instance that would make us consider whether the request to reduce rates would be fair and reasonable. In staff's view, we don't consider that to be appropriate because if we were to reduce rates for this property, it would bring it out of line with how other vacant sections on Stewart Island are rated. So there's about 80 other vacant sections on Stewart Island, and they pay an average of $1,800 in rates for those vacant sections. And the reason the rates are at that level is because there are quite a lot of fixed charges. Okay, so it's not got a lot of those charges have no relation to the value. So essentially, attachment A of the report, which is on page 26 of the agenda, outlines what the ratepayers provided in terms of saying why they think council should be considering a reduction of rates. Staff recommendations for the reasons outlined in the report are to not reduce the rates, because in that instance that would bring that property out of line with how other similar properties are rated. However, that's our interpretation of that section, and it can be a little bit grey, so if council has a different interpretation of that, that's what we are seeking feedback.
Cool. Anything you wanted to add? Well, it's a very comprehensive and detailed report, so thank you for that, and it explains the situation quite well. So I'll open the floor to any questions.
Yeah, I'd just like to state that there's a few errors in what he says also. It has sewage. It's actually part of the first sewage scheme on the island. So I don't know who he spoke to, but the sewage line does go past it. It does have power. He refers to the lack of street lights. Well, that's a common occurrence on Stewart Island. It's part of, and won't get street lights in the sense that we're a dark sky sanctuary and we don't encourage the extra street lights. He refers to a muddy track. Well, it's just a standard gravel road. And the view, I've spoken with over half of the community board, and the community board certainly backs the council staff decision that no remission be given.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions, Councillor Wilson?
Just a question. So the rate search page on the Southland District Council website, it talks about these are the rates. However, if you're looking to buy the property, the rates may change based on all those things. So that would have been up and live at that same time. It hasn't been.
So we've added that since we've had this, so we've thought we could do a better job of providing a disclaimer. So we like ultimately, if people are purchasing a property and they want to know what they're up for, they need to get a LIM. You know, that is the thing that's going to provide them with up-to-date, accurate information. So the rate search is just showing you what the current rates are on that property.
If I understand a LIM report, because I've looked at another BS section contiguous, and it does say on the LIM, this is these rates, but it's because it's owned by the adjacent owner. If you were to buy this property, it almost like has the figure.
We calculate what the number would be if it was.
But this part of the website has been updated since this.
Yeah, the gentleman in question didn't get a LIM when he purchased his property, so.
Right. I would expect that a lawyer would advise you when purchasing of stuff like this, if it were queried, that this might happen.
Yeah, so it's definitely in the LIM, to say.
Just ignored, yep.
Oh, I just think that the person needs to understand that the property's actually had a huge discount up to now because of the contiguous state of it. And that's come to an end. So it's not as though it's been singled out for any reason. It's just what it is. It's unhelpful probably to compare to places on the West Coast, etc., that are a different situation altogether.
Yeah, I think had the information not been contained in the LIM, we'd probably be having a different conversation now, but the information and reflection of the reality of the situation was there and available for the purchaser to see. Councillor Fraser?
Just a comment really, I mean, we purchased the property exactly the same application, and it was incredibly obvious to us at the time that the rate would significant increase the following year. I can't remember exactly how we heard that, but we were well aware of it.
Is there any opportunity going forward that even in the rate search part online, this could be like a question for IT, whether if you are to buy this property, this is what the expected rates would be? Like,
So we're having a discussion with that about whether we can flag those properties. And there's just some issues around the legal status of a limb versus our rate search that we sort of need to navigate around. So we're having that conversation, we just haven't got to that point yet.
I have had some discussions with some real estate agents who have had issues in the past around northern Southland where there's bare sections selling. And then I guess, again, it's just a nasty surprise if they're not getting the limb report.
Someone has gone through the gate.
Understanding that, I guess, have all the opportunities to educate potential buyers that they're not buying a section that may be taking 2 years to build on, and the whole time they're then paying these rates that they weren't expecting, but the information is clear.
Yeah, the advice that staff have talked about is we probably have to consider that in quite detail, because the limb is the process that when you're purchasing a property where everything is contained within, and if we start to provide partial information and other, that there may be issues with that. So that's been the issue that we've been trying to work through in terms of.
How much is a limb to get?
No, the answer to that question.
About $300 and something.
Councillor Pines?
Oh, thanks, Your Worship. I don't expect the Southland ratepayers to subsidise someone who hasn't done the proper due diligence, I suppose, and gets caught out by a surprise like that. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's not unique to Southland.
So I'm getting a pretty good feel around the room that, and if we go to our recommendations there on page 17, that we're noting the supporting information supplied by the ratepayer at 10 Rayner Street, Stewart Island, Management A and Officer's report, that we agree to confirm that no rate remission be applied to 10 Rayner Street, Stewart Island for the 23-24 financial year. So someone in a position to Councillor Spraggan, who seconded, Councillor Duffy. There's no further discussion. I'll put those motions. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you, and just commending the proactive work you did to get that on the website as well. Okay, our next item on the agenda is the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs update from Great South. This is on page 55 of your agenda, and the recommendations on 56. And Karen, to take it.
Rachel, do you have the clicker for the presentation?
Karen,
If you use there. Oh, right. I'm just trying to.
we had a very successful launch of Mayor's Task Force 2 weeks ago now.
Yes. Yeah.
Around Winton, Riverton, and Tiana. Really well.
Yeah, she's just bringing
Just be with us while we get
Mikhail?
I guess we can just kick off while we're doing the technology and maybe even talk about those launches. And did you want to add anything to that, Renata, at all?
Yeah, well, I thought I could give just a brief overview because I'm sure some people may have missed a little bit of the information. So if I just start talking, no mai haere mai, tēnā koutou katoa. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. My name is Renata and I work for Great South. And we are really delighted to be delivering the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs initiative with Rob and the Southland District Council in partnership with Local Government New Zealand and MSD. Right, I'll get my clicker. Here we go. So I'm going to run through the program today and what's happening in the Southland District. The Mayor's Task Force for Jobs is a nationwide network of New Zealand mayors working together towards a vision of all young people under 25 being engaged in appropriate education, training, work or other positive activity within their communities. There are over 30 councils delivering this employment program in rural areas, and we're so excited that the Southland District is now part of this initiative. With the remoteness of some of our communities, young people in rural areas may have limited access to services and training opportunities. So things like getting a driver's licence, which are all barriers to employment. The Mayor's Task Force for Jobs is a bottom-up approach to youth employment solutions. So this is really exciting because it highlights the power of localism and promoting community-led solutions. So who do we help? We are working with individuals who are not in employment, education or training, or individuals who are at school and are at risk of this. Although there is a focus on helping young people between the ages of 16 and 24, the program is available to people of any age who may benefit from some extra support. When an individual is referred to us, we create a plan to help them become job ready and then work with those individuals step by step to ensure that they are fully supported into employment. As Rob said, the program was launched 2 weeks ago, and we are building up a client base with which we are working with. This group is steadily increasing as more people learning about the program and more people refer those people to us. So for example, we have 6 new people that we'll be meeting with next week. We will help young people with a range of things that will help them become work ready. So it could be anything. It could be getting them a driver's license, getting them to undertake some skill-based training. It could be providing mental health support, counselling for them. It could be purchasing workwear, tools of trade. It may even be like giving them a haircut and helping them out with some clothes to wear for an interview. We will also be looking to run courses to the community throughout the year. These will be chosen and run in consultation with the local school, support services and community, just about what best meets the needs of their community members. So these are just some examples on the screen of what other Mayor's Task Force for Jobs programs have done throughout the country. Our first course that we're running in Southland is a first aid course, which will be run into a Tuapuri this term. So the aim of the training courses is to build the attendee skills, confidence and work readiness. As I said, we'll be talking with people in the community about what best meets the needs of their young people. We are running job hubs in Te Anau, Winton and Riverton libraries over the upcoming weeks, when anyone can drop in and learn about the program. Liz, who is our Mayor's Task Force for Jobs coordinator, she's in Te Anau today, and she's got our first job hub there. So it's a pretty exciting day. It's a pretty exciting day for us. Our intention is to expand the number of locations for the hubs to meet local need. So we're available to work with individuals anywhere in the Southland District Council rated area, so location is no barrier. As a community-based initiative, employers are a key part of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, and we want to remove any barriers to employers with regards to taking on new employees. So we are here to help with things like providing PPE gear and can investigate available subsidies and grants for employers who are looking on taking new employees into full-time work. There's a range of ways that we can help employers. We can help provide training for new Mayor's Task Force for Jobs employees. For example, we can help them get endorsements or do specific job-related training whilst they're on the job, if it's going to help that individual develop their skills and retain the employment that they have. Pastoral care for individuals will be an important part of the program, so we will stay in regular contact with employers and employees to track progress, address any issues that may come up, because we want to ensure a smooth transition into the workplace for everyone involved. So, how does the program work for young people? So far, referrals to the program have come from social service agencies and schools, but individuals can be referred to us from anybody. So whether it be a teacher, a parent, an agency, or even the individual themselves. So to get started, they can just send us a text or an email, or give our lovely coordinator Liz a call, and then from there we arrange an initial meeting and take it from there. So in terms of the young people that we're currently working with, from the words of our coordinator Liz, she's just so enthusiastic about the potential that they have, and over time these young people are really just looking for an employer to take a chance on them and to give them some employment. So that's where this whole ethos of it being a community project is so important, because it's about employers working together with council, with the mayor, with agencies within their local community to make sure that our young people can get into work and can sustain work. So if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to contact Rob, the team here, myself or Liz, and we can answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Renata. And one of the key success factors in this is it's a centrally funded, locally delivered kind of project. So it's not taking any of Southland District Council ratepayer money. It's funded through MSD, and there's been so many success stories up and down the country. Really cool stories of people getting into work, and from the employer and the employee side, it really has been a win-win. So I just wanted, before I open up for questions, acknowledge the great work that the team at STC and Great South have done in getting this off the ground, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Any questions from the floor? Councillor Duffy?
Just a couple. So does this link with the Alive program, or are they sort of run in parallel?
No, the Mayors Task Force for Jobs is a nationwide program that's that is run across the country via district councils. So we work with other social agencies that are based in the Southland District Council area. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And is there a position to help with literacy if that's lacking?
Yes, absolutely. I think the beauty of the funding for this program is that it is really needs driven. So when the young person meets with the youth coach, they work out a program that best meets their needs, and everybody is going to be different. Some people will need a lot of support, some people won't need so much support, but if literacy is an issue for somebody getting employment, it's a barrier, then absolutely we would look to get them some literacy support.
Very good. And is there any connection with corrections, like if there's young people released into our community that...
Yes, we can receive referrals from corrections, and we would work with those young people to help them get employment.
Councillor Wilson?
Is Gore District Council involved in the initiative as well?
Yes, they are. So they run the program through their Closing the Gap scheme. Yep, and they've been running that for quite a few years now.
So how does the crossover work into like the Ardlussa area, where like Riversdale, and up into Balfour, a lot of the kids are going to school in the Gore area? Is there the functionality?
Yeah, so we work. We've met with the team at Closing the Gaps, and we will be working with them to talk about sort of some of those areas. But we want to make sure that we capture everybody in the Southland District Council area.
Initially, it was looked at combining Clutha, Gore and Southland into one kind of model, but that didn't really land, so we've ended up doing this. But I've been talking with Ben as well about making sure that we're not getting too territorial over it. We're actually focusing on the young people getting into work, and so those.
It's checking there's no areas of gaps, because I guess the hubs being Yarnell, Winton, and Riverton. So just checking that area east, that kind of falls into the
That's right. So
border of Gore.
So Gore have been doing a lot of work in their area, and some of that, as you know, is sort of quite close. So the aim of it is about the outcomes for young people, but we will be increasing the hubs that we run over time. We're just in the fledgling stage at the moment, and we'll be slowly developing that up.
Yeah, also noting in the Edendale, Wyndham, out that space as well, which is Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a great scheme, but how do you, if you invest time and money in tools and haircut and clothes, how do you sort of work out if someone's taken the mickey, or where do the checks and balances? Is the money being well spent on that particular person?
Yeah, and that's where the expertise of the young people working with the clients comes in. Most of the time it's going to be really positive, and the young person is going to get so much value out of the services that are provided for them. But we'll have our own checks and balances to make sure that what's been invested is going to a good cause, and hopefully a good outcome for that young person.
And have you got some success stories already?
No, we just launched 2 weeks ago. So we got success stories in terms of building up a team, absolutely. So we're building up a group of clients that we're working with, and getting a program sorted for them to become work ready. Yeah. But it will take time. It's certainly not something that happens overnight when you're working with a young person who's facing barriers to employment. But if we can put in a wraparound service and provide them with the support that we need, we will give them the best chance of being employed. The other thing that I consider also is about what does success look like for you. So success in some cases won't be an outcome of sustainable employment. Success might be that that person actually gets up every morning and has a routine to follow and starts engaging with their community. So success does look really different for each individual person, and I think that, I keep that at the forefront of my mind, as well.
I think as well, if we look at what a measurable outcome for the program is actually someone that's in full-time, which is 30 hours or more paid employment for 91 days. So there is actually a measurable outcome for the program in terms of, to answer your first question there around that. So it is actually measured. Councillor Bakar?
Thank you. The 40,000, it's $400,000 funding, right? For the mural task force? Or do we have a fixed chunk of money?
There's a fixed chunk. We're starting later than the July start date, and it's been apportioned out. I can answer that. It's $80,000, and when you achieve upfront, then when you achieve 12 sustainable business outcomes, or employment outcomes, it's another $30,000, so $110,000, and then year 2, which would start in July, would be $176,000.
This is for 2 years overall, 400,000 given as a full chunk.
Yeah, or 19 months.
Can you explain to me what those 12 business outcomes, I do mean 12 people in work and
Employed for 91 days, as 430 plus hours a week, or if
you have to have that deliverable before we can get the next chunk released. Okay. And I thought the graphic was still up there. You mentioned a workshop today in TNL. That's happening?
The Job Hub.
Yeah, the Job Hub. What does that look like? So do you have employers as well there who have been notified today that there'll be someone and we might have someone matching? Or is it just candidates coming in today and no employers per se?
Yeah, we're keeping it quite open, but probably focused more on candidates. But anybody is welcome to go. So that involves the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs Coordinator, Liz. She will go to the library, and it's kind of like a drop-in centre where she will meet with anyone that comes in, and if it's an employer who wants more information, it could be a candidate who's wanting to join the program.
Yeah, because I would think like in a place like TNL that's always crying out for workers, you would have employers interested, and as long as they kept abreast of what is going on there. Yeah. Not just a drop in, possibly a bit more focus as well as employers might get us better.
We invited I won't say all. We invited employers to come along to the launch in Te Anau a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully those that's where they would have got a huge amount of information, and we welcome inquiries at any time, and we'll still be reaching out. Thank you.
Councillor Ruttencourt.
Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Renata. Really exciting. And I went to your launch in Riverton, and one of the questions asked there was around accommodation, and you're talking like Te Anau. Any thought got into that since that conversation in Riverton about where we're going to accommodate these workers for some of these towns with accommodation?
I'm unaware of any further discussion around that.
Okay. So some.
So Councillor Keese and then Councillor Graney, I think you've got a question as well.
Thanks for your report, Renata. It's a great initiative, and it's really good to see it finally arriving in Southland. It's been around for a while. So delivering it as it sounds terrific. It's also good you've all got all that experience from Southland Youth Futures. You know, there's a lot of connections and proven stuff that really works for our young people. So I look forward to this being a real success. Well done.
And one of the important parts about that too is the fact that you've got 30 councils doing it up and down the country and the shared knowledge, and so we don't have to reinvent any wheels, and we can look at what's worked well and what hasn't worked well up and down the country, and everyone's willing to share, which is quite cool. Councillor Grady, did you have a question? Councillor O'Brien, I'll let you jump in if you've got one. You there, Tom? I wonder if I'm muted.
I'm just wondering, like, you know, you said before that success starts with a routine, as you've outlined. What sort of emphasis has been put on self-awareness with an understanding of a focus on diet and sleep and activity, and understanding why the students are doing what they are doing?
Okay, so my understanding of the question is, will there be a focus on things like, that sort of more personal diet, well-being? Again, when we meet with a person and we talk with them and find out more about their situation, we will be able to assess the type of support they need. And one of the things that we are experienced in is talking about those key employability skills, and that will cover some of those things that you've talked about. So we would support that person, and they could do some pre-employability skills training, or it might be that we need to connect them with a counsellor who can talk through some specific areas that might be a barrier to that young person.
And I think the key, it's a bespoke kind of model as well. So each it's a targeted case for each person. It's not you have to follow these rules for everyone. And so that's one of the advantages as well. Does that answer your question, Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, thanks very much.
Cool. Then no, Councillor Menzies?
Thank you. I was just going to make a comment that at each of those launches there were potential employers who had a real interest in making this work for young people, and also highlighting there were a number of school principals there, but it's just not for students leaving school up to 24 and possibly a bit older there as well. And it's also, I think, a response to keeping our young people and young adults in their community where they can find success as well, which is has been more difficult for them to link to their local the local assistance had been provided in the past, which may be in Invercargill itself, and that's always been a challenge getting there. So going to these young adults is a good one.
Thank you.
So we've got a recommendation there that we thank the Youth Features team, Renata, and the Southland District Council team there, and I'm very happy to move that recommendation.
Just before that, I just asked that the terrific program, but please don't forget the island.
Yeah, well, we certainly won't.
And the factor that the island kids, once they turn 13, are at Invercargill schools or Dunedin schools, and so could easily be, missed.
Yes, and we have connected with some of the schools that have boarding facilities to ensure that we can connect with individuals who are at risk of not being in educational training.
Great.
Thank you. Were you happy to second that, Councillor Springs?
Yeah, very much so.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against? I hope not. Yeah, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we're just going to jump to probably the financial report. And is happy to come up as we're waiting on the board chairs to arrive. Sorry to change the agenda on you. So that's 7.4, page 57 if you're attending. I'll welcome Joni and Cam up to the table.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of Council. I'm here to present the financial report for the period ended 31 January 2024. Operating income for the 7-month period is 1.6 million, or 2% above projection, and the key variances are detailed on page 62 and 63 of your agenda. Operating expenditure for the period is 819,000, or 1% below projection, and those reasons are discussed on page 63 and 64. Capital expenditure for the period is $1 million or 6% under projection overall, with community resources, corporate services and sewerage capital spend being below projection due to the timing of the project. Stormwater water and water supply capital projects are above projection due to these projects being completed earlier or ahead of schedule. And transport capital costs are 1% under projection overall, with a range of overs and unders discussed on page 66 of your agenda. And happy to try and answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from Councillor Byers?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering where the this council's decided to invest in the share market. I'm wondering where that sits in these.
So as of yet, what we've done is the paperwork, and the Chief Executive and I are just in the process of signing that right now. And then we'll be requesting our first grant of the LGFA shortly in the April run.
So at that point, the debt levels that are noted here will increase to the value, the same amount as what's going to be put into the share market.
Correct.
And I believe as those tranches come through, it'll be reported to the Financial Assurance.
Correct.
In those meetings.
And they'll be on these, they'll show up in these reports.
And we'll also be doing separate reports in regards to how those investments are running. And of course, coming back to you at every quarter to ask you whether you want to invest in the next tranche or not, because that's what we promised to do.
Thank you.
Councillor Geist?
Your Worship, just a query about and you may not be able to answer because it's not your area of expertise, but the page 64, the comment around the stormwater under projection because the condition assessment hasn't happened. Do we know when that is due to, when it's now thought to be occurring?
I'm unable to answer that. I think can we come back to you in regards to that point here?
Councillor Menzies?
Thank you. The same maybe with my question, just around the water supply, page 64, mentions that rural water costs are higher than projection due to increased routine and unplanned maintenance required. I can understand the unplanned maintenance required, but has there been ongoing increases with respect to the routine maintenance as well? Is that significant or?
We'll find out and we'll come back to you in regards to that.
It's interesting with that water one, because there's a comment there about the consumption being lower, so the income comes in. So you encourage people to use less water, and then that affects the bottom line too. So a bit of a double-edged sword. Are there any further, Councillor Byers?
Thank you. I see the sewage capital costs are 700, nearly 800,000 below projection. The Rootsdale upgrade, which is near completion, is that coming in well under budget, is it?
I won't be able to comment on that. I'll have to come back on you on that one as well. Yeah.
Look, I apologise, everybody. I can't answer that either. Fran and a large chunk of her team are over in the emergency centre working on the emergency, so they're not able to be here. And a couple of other reasonably significant gaps in the lineup due to COVID at the moment. So we are a bit light on the ground in terms of being able to answer the questions today.
Sorry, there's a mention there of the community housing expenditure being higher due to additional maintenance costs to these refurbishments. I see there's a refurbishment happening in Edendale, which seems to have come to a stop. Is that a financial aspect to that?
Yes, through the Chair, we're just redeveloping a new specification in terms of how we'll go about renovating that unit, try and reduce that cost from what was originally presented to Council, I believe, last year.
Okay. Does believe it could be reduced?
That is the aim, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any further, Councillor Chamberlain?
Just on page 69, statement of comprehensive income is budgeted there. That will be 8,900,000. Is that how much we're going to have to borrow for this financial year to cover our costs, is it?
No, that's just your surplus deficit.
So the borrowings is, we don't have the budgeted figures down there, do we? We don't have budgeted balance sheet. No, so that's just your surplus deficit, because a lot of that, of course, will be depreciation as well. I think the costs are actually a lot higher than that because we've got a lot of capital projects.
Do you know roughly how much?
So the borrowings would be higher, not without the financial statements at this stage, because we don't have the budgets in there. It's something we probably should do, budget numbers in there. So we'll add that to the list and come back to you. My gut feeling would be somewhere between 15 to 20 mil.
For this year?
I would think so. But at this point, we're not borrowing at that level. We're managing to get through. So as you can see on the page, what is it, 72? 72? No, not your page below that. No, sorry, it's on page 73. You'll see our current debt levels is 21.8. We're now at the end of February. We, of course, we do need to go out in April and borrow. I've been told probably we need to get at least probably at least five in April just to meet our operational costs and our capital costs. Plus the borrowing we'll need to do for the investment, which will be around the 3 million. And I think the month after we'll probably be looking at something similar again. So I'm thinking we'll probably need to borrow around about 10 to 15 million this year. Combination of the capital costs and the...
Are we comfortable with that? Is that...
That's what we've budgeted. That's what you've got in your annual plan to do for your capital projects. You just simply don't have the cash lying there to do capital projects.
Can I ask what the LGFA interest rate's at the moment?
I haven't looked at the last one out. It's still around the 5. But it also depends on the term at which you're borrowing as to whether you're going to get a better rate or a higher rate.
Coming backwards?
It came back a little bit, I believe, yeah.
I guess just in terms of what you're saying, like the cash flow report on page 71 probably shows the cash position, which probably indicates the need to borrow in even the short term as well, rather than the profit and loss.
The thing that comes in these months is the roading program. So that's what suddenly makes us require the cash. We usually do have to get to after Christmas and then we require cash quite.
Councillor Bowles, did you have another question?
Yeah, just quickly, and it's been partially answered there, but just wanted to make the comment because I think there's been some confusion around that investment. The borrowing levels do need to increase according to the amount of money that you're putting into the share market. So
We are borrowing for that, yeah.
we're borrowing to put into the share market. As it's being clarified here.
Yeah, we've just got to remember that we're differentiating, though, our policy. So we're not borrowing to put into the share market. What we're doing is changing our philosophy. So instead of using the monies that we've got sitting in reserves and internally borrowing that to other communities or ourselves who need the money, we have decided that actually it's a better philosophy to invest those monies, get a higher return, and then borrow from the LGFA for the capital works that we need. So it's a swing and a roundabout.
Which was the policy approved?
Yes, which is the ongoing policy approval.
I'd just like to say it would make no sense at all to be trying to borrow after we complete projects. We've got to borrow in advance to get our funding in place to do anything. So that's the logic of it.
Thank you. We've got a recommendation there that we receive the financial report. Someone in a position to move that? Second by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried. Thanks, Jodie. Thanks, Dan. Okay, I'll go backwards now to item, I think, 7.2. Sorry, 7.2. Yep, we can. So this is the Mayor's report on page 51, and we have our Auckland Community Board Chair here. But before I are there any questions for the Mayor on the report anyone wants to know about? Or any of the councillors want to do an update on anything that they've involved in that list? Councillor Ruttencourt?
Thanks, Rob. I attended a meeting with Creative New Zealand last week around new funding opportunities for creatives. So I've handed out a flyer to everybody and I'll send around a digital copy. Some really, really exciting funds available. I won't take you through them, but I'm happy to go through them with you via Zoom or whatever. It will stop a significant amount of money coming out of the smaller pot of creative communities. An example was we had an artist in residence at Waikaia, and that took 12,000 out of the creative communities pot. There is a fund now available for emerging artists. But anyone, have a read, and you're very welcome to talk to me about it. I'm happy to get in front of your communities around it as well. Thanks, Rob.
Just regional heritage, we haven't met since the last report, but there's a meeting scheduled, which will be initial discussions to do with the heads of agreement.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, well, on that note, we've got the Fieldland Board Chair Diane Holmes and the Deputy Chair Julie Burgess, so I'll invite you to up to the table, and thank you very much for making your time.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Thank you, councillors, for giving us the opportunity to report to you today. My report focuses on our community as a holistic entity, not just the work of the board and the council, so that you can better understand our place and what's happening there. I have with me today, as you've heard, Deputy Chair Julie Burgess. She resides and represents the Manapouri community, and she will be doing her own report for that part of our region. Fiona sent through some headings so that I'm sort of stuck to the guideline, for the report today. So, new developments in the Te Anau community. So, Te Anau is growing houses. Fields of new houses stretch out in every direction on the outskirts of our town. In the past 5 years, we've seen the developments that started and stagnated in the early 2000s completed and almost fully sold. The Heritage had 120 sections, the Delta 269 sections, Alpine Terrace 66, stages 1 to 5 of Kepler Heights 88, the Fiordland Retirement Village 23. In these new developments there are now houses on 80 to 100% of the sections, and there are new builds popping up every week. We have other recent developments underway as well. Stage 6 of the Kepler Heights, 18, and Fiordland Estates, 130. The sections in these are over 90% sold already, with building starting in earnest in these areas too. In 2023, the Fiordland Community Board sold the Luxmore subdivision land to the same developer as the Fiordland Estates. They've now started to work on our industrial area extension and will move to phase 2, which is another residential subdivision in the centre of town. In Manapouri, the new Lancewood subdivision has just gone on the market, offering up a further 72 sections for sale. So you can say Fiordland's doing its bit to increase your ratepayer base. You'll even be forgiven if you arrived in the area and thought our main industry was no longer tourism, but it is as being a nursery for housing stock. Sadly, not many of these hundreds of houses have had a positive impact on what is becoming a housing shortage in our area. Many of these new houses are not homes for families or individuals to own or rent. They are holiday houses, typically being listed on Airbnb or batch care. So the question remains, in a tourist town like ours, how do we disincentivise investors away from a very lucrative Airbnb market and towards long-term rentals? And how do we influence the availability of low-cost housing for first-time buyers? We're watching the Fiordland Estates development with interest as the developer is a local. He's taken a different and more community-centric approach to his development. The sections are a mix of sizes and they allow for smaller footprints and they allow for transportable homes. I've talked with several real estate agents this week and they tell me that they've made a number of sales in the estate to first home buyers and to resident retirees, who are in turn freeing up the big family home for rentals and family housing. So there is a bit of a bright spot and some light there for housing stock on the horizon in this particular development. And I hope that he does something similar with the Luxmore subdivision, since he's the same developer. Our highly anticipated Te Anau Basin Development Plan, I also hope, will give some answers to how we can zone to attract developers or individuals who might also consider higher density and therefore lower cost housing. But this report's been delayed for several reasons. The most recent proposed final date for delivery is the 7th of April, although I understand that's still a bit of a moving target. But there should be draft concept plans coming soon for our board and our community to give feedback on. And I'm hoping that waiting so long means there'll be a very comprehensive and well-researched plan that aligns well with our scoping document, and the community can get the guidance that we need to ensure a sustainable and successful future. The Te Anau Airport Manapori is now with Great South for the preparation and implementation of the 2023 Airport Review. I'm a member of the governance team. It's good to see positive progress being made on some of the underlying out-of-sight foundational issues being progressed, which when resolved will deliver us an airport that I believe will be ready for proposal to transition to CCTO. Right, community events. We're good at this in Te Anau and Fiordland in general. We have a lot of events in our community which involve both community and visitor participation. They help us with year-round income for the town and help us as a community to have lots of positive reasons to be together. The annual invitational tennis tournament and rodeos were both really well attended as always, and both were very successful events. The Fiordland Waitangi Charitable Trust delivered yet again another week of outstanding Waitangi celebrations with events and opportunities to learn about te reo, Māori astronomy, traditional Māori gardening and kai prep. They held visual arts awards, kapa haka demonstrations, waka ama competitions, and of course there was delicious hangi. They are very popular and well organised celebrations and create a feeling of community togetherness. The Trust continues its work throughout the year to providing te reo classes, flax weaving lessons and various other workshops. 3 weeks ago, the Te Anau Basin Trail Ride, the motocross and trail ride held in Mararoa, was a big event attracting over 620 trail bike riders who competed over 2 days. Coming up, we have the annual Te Anau Autumn Flower Show, which typically attracts around 1,500 visitors through its doors and hundreds of entries. The organisers involve the primary schools in the area in presenting flower and vegetables arrangements and other artwork. The fantastic Te Anau Tartan Festival is set to celebrate all things Scottish again this year over the Easter weekend. And then in June, the Big 3 hunting and fishing competition takes place. So a real variety of stuff. We have many more events in the pipeline, but I think I'll be called back here for another update, so I need to leave some material for a later date. Community achievements and updates. As at the writing of this report, the Te Anau Cricket junior and senior teams have won all their games this season. And we believe we're set to win the Senior Southland Cup again this year. We're very proud of our cricketers, and it's great that council support them by giving them use of the field for the practice oval and for their practice nets, for their oval and their practice nets. The community board also helped fund and gave permission for a bund around half the pitch, which has meant they're able to grow a very active group of cricketers and a rowdy audience for them in our region. The Te Anau Trails Trust, having completed the Lake to Lake cycle trail in previous years, continue their progress after much controversy over a lizard towards Te Anau Downs, determined to support the region by providing a world-class cycleway. The Te Anau Community Gardens and Orchard are a success with a very active group growing crops many of us never knew could be grown in Te Anau, like passion fruit, alongside a huge range of other healthy crops that they give away via their kai pantry. They run workshops and are always happy to provide advice and help to anyone interested in anything gardening. They've only been going 2 years and they're a fantastic resource for our community. The Friends of the Library run an amazing book sale every year, and they raise funds that largely go back into supporting our local library and other literary related projects in town. Most recently, they're working with council staff to support and fund a community notice board, and they've installed Lilliput libraries, little library boxes, in 3 different areas in town for people to borrow or swap from. Te Hao Toka have been a success worth celebrating in our community, from creating welcome packs for newcomers to a brilliant club hobby and support directory. They do coffee and chat mornings for seniors, and meals and things for new families to the area as well. And they deliver Christmas and Matariki hampers to those who might need something extra at that time of the year. They've done an amazing job joining the dots and activating a lot of social networks, giving mini grants that have made a big difference to a multitude of small groups. And they've absolutely played a role in the growth of community health and wellbeing through their 2 to 3 years in Te Anau. Anna Starr, the Fiordland Wellbeing Coordinator, has been a literal star, and I would absolutely support the continuation of the Te Hao Toka roles in Fiordland. Key reports the board has considered recently. Well, the big ticket items for the Fiordland board at the moment is the long-awaited Te Anau Basin Development Plan and the airport, both of which I've already spoken about. Coming up are discussions and decisions about where and how to spend our better off funding for our playgrounds. Communication and consultation, as well as the immense amount of consultation that's taken place as part of the airport review and Te Anau Basin Development Plan, the board continues to schedule regular community drop-in sessions so that the community can see we're proactively trying to engage. I also write a quarterly newsletter. Well, I've written it once, but I'm about to write another one, so that makes it quarterly. That is published in the Te Anau Trader and on social media to ensure that ratepayers understand the role of their board and what we're doing. And finally, things that keep me awake at night. I actually sleep really well, but on the odd occasion, thoughts do prevent me from nodding off, other than housing, the airport, the development plan. The only thing that keeps me awake at night are trees. You will have seen perhaps in the media recently there's been tree poisonings in Te Anau, and tree vandalism continues in Manapori. But that seems like I've mentioned Manapori now, a very good segue to hand over to Julie to tell you more about their community.
Thanks, Mayor Rob, and thank you, Diane, for that, and the councillors for this opportunity to speak about my fantastic hometown of Manapori. Manapori has about 300 permanent residents, and we swell it, as we do at the moment with the tourists, for our tracks and our cruises. Just a little bit about myself. This is my first time on the community board. My husband is Alistair. We've lived in Manapori for 16 years. We have 2 sons in Te Anau and 7 grandchildren, and 1 daughter in Invercargill and 3 grandchildren. So we're well and truly Fiordland people. I would like to thank the past community board for applying for the TIF funding for Manapori, as when I became an elected member, I inherited 3 new sets of toilets with fantastic wrapping. And I know you get excited about toilets, but I chose the wrapping, and they're beautiful toilets. We had otter seal on Fraser's Beach Road, so that all our dust is gone, a new boat ramp and floating jetty, and the locals are very happy about our area being smartened up. To give you a clear idea of our achievements, I will give you a breakdown on our activities. I am Chairman and Trustee of the Manapori Community Pool Charitable Trust. The pool is funded by pool key sales and fundraising. It is rated, but apart from spending $60,000 over the last few years on heating and fibroblasting, which was mainly grants we were successful in applying for, we try to keep the rates for a rainy day. The pool has barbecue days for the locals and visitors, with the sausages being donated locally and the bread donated from the bakery. These barbecues give families a fun day out. We had a jam session last Sunday with a local band and barbecued at church for the pool, and it went very well. The Pool Trust also looks after the tennis courts, with local volunteers refurbish the courts and the local nursery fix the fences. This sounds quite housekeeping, but this is what we do in small Manapori. We are now ready to take on an international tennis tournament. We look after the village green, and we've just ordered 100,000 K of playground equipment from Better Off funding. We had a barbecue and fun day with Active South to see what gear the children would use, and when completed, Active South will come back for another barbecue. The Pool Trust has just completed an MOU with Council to look after the hall. It's a fantastic hall but needed some care and organising. One of our local trust members, Laura Harwood, is the caretaker and she's working with Chase on the Spartaco booking system and has cleaned the hall up. She was also doing the grounds, which saves the council money. We have just chosen the colours for council to paint the outside of the hall this year, so it will all be looking good. For those who don't know Manapori, all these council assets are within walking distance from each other, making it a very, very safe for children to play. We do have a lot more young families in the area now. My husband Alistair is a lake-to-lake trail trustee and the maintenance man. He's also the chairman of the Manapori Weed Busters. The Manapori Weed Busters are made up of a whole lot of retired old men that run around the town doing a whole lot of stuff. I think Riverton's got them as well. They also have an MOU in health and safety with the council. They do spraying, weeding, lawn mowing that the contractor doesn't do. They've built and maintained the walking tracks off the main cycle tracks. They've planted 3,000 native trees in green spaces in the lake foreshore and picnic areas in the last year. The last year they've done a total of 430 voluntary airs. The council sees the Weed Busters work very beneficial for our ratepayers. Now, for Diane's trees. On the foreshore, the Manapori Foreshore Development Plan done many, many years ago, unfortunately was never implemented. So understandingly, people have been very disappointed and some have done their own pruning. Having said that, the last year has been reasonably quiet for me to get trees sorted. The Manapori Weed Busters and myself are working closely with Mark Day from the council to remove dead and allocated trees on the foreshore. Mark is working on the resource consent and the Weed Busters will help doing the clearing, which is again a cheaper deal for the ratepayers. A potentially exciting thing for Manapori is that the Lake to Lake Trail is being scoped to go off the dangerous 5 kilometres, I'm presuming some of you would have done it here, on the main highway from Balloon Loop Road to Supply Bay Road. The reason there's been a hold up here is the Fiordland National Park plan is many years out of date, so we can't go through the national park. There's been 3 ecologists here last week mapping it out also. This will bring more people to Manapori as a lot of cyclists turn back at Balloon Loop back to Te Anau because it's dangerous. If this happens, it will be a great time for businesses to bring their cyclists to Manapori and enjoy our spaces. To finish, as I say, it's my first elected time, I would like to thank the Community Board, especially Sarah and Diane, and all the people I email and ring and probably annoy in the council while I'm learning this elected role, so I can answer people's questions. The Ateno app works fairly well for me and I feel very well supported and in my role as a Manapori rep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you to both of you, and it's I just love hearing these great community stories where the council and community are working together for the benefit of the community, and yeah, some real success stories there. And yeah, thank you once again for coming along today and sharing them with us.
Thank you.
Councillor Graney, was there anything you wanted to add or discuss at all?
Thank you. Well, I just want to commend both Diane and Julie for the work that they are doing. They've both done an incredible job, and I think their reports both reflect that. One thing that I just want to comment on is that the Te Anau Basin Development Plan is going to be really, really important for the Te Anau area, and I certainly would endorse the need as well to make sure that we keep housing and the housing related issues on our agenda so that we can be much more proactive in how we manage this space. As a council, if we can be seen to be enabling and supporting, I think that it reflects the intent of the Fiordland Community Board plan, and I think that is something that we should aspire to from a council perspective as well. But well done, both of you. Thank you for your reports.
Thanks, Sarah. Are there any other questions from the floor? Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, a couple of questions for you guys. Is there any work being done around, when you talk Airbnbs and then you talk to some of the camping ground owners that feel like they're not on the level playing field as Airbnb. So is there any discussion around making Airbnbs more of a commercial activity in the town rather than a...
Yeah, So myself, Sarah, Bobby Brown and Teresa Kavanagh have had some meetings and discussions, also with a couple of meetings with the FBA president. Their chair is there as well, Nathan. Yes, there's been discussion around it. We're waiting to get some information at the moment, well I am, from Queenstown as to whether or not anything they've done in that space has actually helped solve a housing problem, and whether it's just caused more problem for council staff trying to police it. And sort of, they're going through a consultant's review of that at the moment, so they should get that report in the next couple of weeks to determine whether it's been effective or whether it is actually getting more money into their rates coffers, whether it's actually solving any of the problems that they intended it to solve. So before we see that information from those who led the way and faced all the legal challenges from Airbnb and have been through that, I'd like to see that piece of work before we start doing any moves ourselves, so that we don't follow a bad pathway.
Because the next question is there any work been done on what amount of money that Airbnb brings to Te Anau? Because it's all very well.
I would love to work out how we'd get our hands on some of that, you know, for the ratepayers in the community, but yeah.
I would suggest that they bring out quite a bit of money to the restaurants and the facilities within Te Anau. So
I'd see a lot of this being, needs to be led by the central government, because it's not just here, Rotorua, anywhere that there's tourists, Queenstown here, anywhere there's tourists, the same problem is happening over and over in New Zealand. But yeah, once this report comes through, it's certainly something that I know the Southland Business Association has on their radar, and they're an important group that we work with, and it's also something that the local social workers have brought to us as potentially a remedy for some of the housing stuff, as well as producing more rates income if they're considered commercial entities, or we limit the number of bed nights before they become a commercial entity.
but should we be, how might I put this, not so worried about the amount of B&Bs in Te Anau. It's about, I know the Southland Business Association have got quite a good plan around worker accommodation and stuff like that. So if people want to come to Te Anau and build a house for Airbnb, well, so be it. But we just need to look at other options for our staff and social housing. But
I think the key is getting that fit for purpose housing, and what you touched on, Diane, with some of those new developments coming through where they're getting specific houses targeted at that rather than the Airbnb. So rather than, because the demand's obviously there for it, and like you say, there is an impact on the economy, a positive impact on the economy, so it's balancing that off with, I think, getting it fit for purpose.
Yeah, but you're talking about getting their hands on some of that Airbnb money.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think they should pay a commercial, whether that's through water meters, but then, you know, some of these houses might only be Airbnb for 3 months, and you know, so they may not use as much of the facilities as a household that's there for 12 months. So, it's a tricky one to target, that one. But I think it's offset by the amount of money that they bring to Te Anau in the district.
They do. Yeah. No, I wouldn't want to kill the market for Airbnb either.
Oh, well, thank you both very, very much for coming along. I love hearing the reports, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks very much.
We've got our Wallace Takitimu board chair, Tony Philpott. Do you want to come up to the table?
I'm not quite as organised as Diane.
Thanks for coming along, Tony.
Just go into it.
Yours.
So just hi to Mayor Scott, Deputy Mayor Menzies and the councillors and visitors. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Mayor, for the time and effort you have put into our community in the last year. It is very much appreciated. Also to Councillor Bopari, frankly, we just like having her around. You are one intelligent person who cares about people, which I think is very important. My name is Tony Philpott and I'm the chair of the Wallace Takitimu board. I'm going to start my report with the negative, sorry. I apologise to any person who had the misfortune of watching the Guy Williams show last Thursday night. It wasn't funny, it was not good for either
Ojai or Nightcaps towns, and I cannot believe that TV3 would even put that kind of rubbish on air. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the Ojai Nightcaps I grew up in. Ojai Nightcaps are two strong towns with great community people, a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. But every town has its odd muppet hiding in the closet. We are a completely new board, which has made things very interesting, especially tackling the long-term plan. But we're starting to get our heads around things now. I had previously spent around 9 years on the Nightcap CDA, so I had a small idea of how things work, very small one. Our board is made up from varying backgrounds, but we all have the same common goal to make our communities a better place to live. So far, I think we're achieving this, but it is slowly. Last year, we managed to get the new Taurau camping ground ball rolling forward. Taurau has been without a camping ground since 2016, and that's been a hot topic. The previous board had received better off funding from the government to get work started. Our board got straight to work engaging Bufa Pascal to help us with an opportunity study for the camping ground. 4 sites were looked at comprehensively, and there was one clear winner, the original camping ground site. The options were put to the community over 2 drop-in sessions in consultation. The community was 100% on the same page as the board and Bufa Pascal, so that made things easy for us to get cracking on the project. Kelly and Jendi are working on the resource consent now and have talked to local contractors, builders, electricians for design build ideas, and have put the tender to GETS for the tendering system for people to come in and tender with ideas. Our goal is to have stage 1 completed by December this year. Ojai Nightcaps are towns built around coal mining. In the 70s, there were 700 to 800 people employed at the mines, and nearly all were local. 150 years on, nearly to the year the mines first started, we are faced with the reality of having no mines in either town. So what will our towns look like in 5 years, 10 years, or even 100? The mining companies have been extremely good to both communities over the last century, and Bathurst, our last remaining mine, has been exceptionally supportive of both Ojai and Nightcaps. And quite frankly, we wish they could find more clients to stay open. The town needs a Rob Muldoon to turn up and build a coal-fired power station. But I don't think that's going to happen. So as a community, we have a lot to think about in the future. Part of the Nightcaps mine is on council ground, approximately 74 hectares, which Bathurst lease off the council. They've put some very good ideas forward of rehabbing for the council land and part of their own. Our board, Mayor Rob, Esprit and some council staff attended a presentation by the mine last week on their ideas for rehab in the mine closure. I think it would be fair to say that we were very excited and watch this space. We also have received the master plan from McGregor Park, who boundaries the mine, so timing could not be better. Joining the 2 plans together could make something very special. Hopefully I can enlighten you more at the September meeting when I give my next report. Mayor Rob has presented 3 community service awards for us in the last 6 months, recipients being Graham Appleby, Bev Evans and Peter Gutzel. I know these people personally and can say they so deserve these awards, and the communities need more of these amazing people. Just this morning I asked the local marae, which has just started up again. The board was very keen to get the marae at Ojai up and going again, because we thought it would be good for the Ojai Nightcaps, well, the western community actually. And so I received this from them this morning, so I'll read it out to you because I think it's quite important. I'm not too good on some of the Maori words, but I'll do my best. So this is from Priscilla, who is the secretary for the Te Oranui Mary Ohai marae. I am writing to inform you of our progress. We as a committee have achieved and what we have been able to achieve so far since becoming registered as the Te Oranui Mary Ohai Incorporation. This year we have a few people who hire out the marae, Wharekai area during the month. We have Southern Reap who use it for activity, play for the babies, toddlers for the community, which they have had double digits attending to these multiple times. We also have a Te Reo Medical Centre come over once a month to do health checkups for the community members. We have whānau consultancy services come in once a month also to use our office here for their business to offer the community members Mary, which is massage and more. We have hosted a Christmas dinner for senior citizens and intend to do a midwinter and another Christmas dinner later on in the year. The Christmas dinner this year is a bake-off theme for the elders. We have also held tangihangi for our whānau last year. Having people from our communities volunteer to work in the kitchen to cook and clean while the whānau are staying. Supply the kai ingaranga, call welcome, and the kai kororero speaker for the manahuri. And we have people set up and help to do the hangi for the whānau. We have also put in a big mahari vegetable garden behind our wharekai. Some of this is intended for another fundraiser around Easter. The community has put a kai pātaka or pantry by the wharekai, so people in the community that may need food can come and go help themselves, as well as those within the community can help and donate food. We will also use our vegetable garden to help teach others te mara gardening. We have been keeping the Southland District Council netball courts next to our wharekai well maintained and tidying them up for the people in the Ohai community. We have been working with Active Southland to get funding to provide basketball hoops and balls for the courts, as well as hosting and putting on events for children and rangatahi youth for the community. While this is in progress, we are still working hard behind the scenes, applying for funding so that we can provide further services for our communities and hold events for them in the Western Southland area, including funding for everyday running costs of the marae. We are still at very early stages of getting up and going and still learning, but we have plans to help our communities provide services for all people. Some of our goals and services include Active Southland, Southern Reap, whānau consultancy services, senior citizens. We want to teach kai mara and hangi process, cooking and preserves, kai karanga, calling and welcoming onto marae, and mā raku, discipline through the art of mā raku, being sticks training for tāhoi, and ranga weaving. We want our rangatahi youth to be involved in everything and put forward their ideas for us to act on, so they have a voice also and they are putting into our future. So that was from the chair, Conrad Waihipi, who's a guy who I've got a lot of respect for, and I just hope that he gets things up and running and good for Ohai and for our community. So, yep, that's me.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. And yeah, you do live in a really fantastic community out there, and it was great when we had the farm cook opening and Nightcaps to have that hangi food supplied by the marae as well. It was a great feed and great to see that local communities supporting itself too.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Tony from the council meetings?
Just a comment that I think there's a theme coming through for both your report and Diane's report about the importance and contribution of the volunteers in our community. The work that's done without necessarily being seen to be done. And it's also supporting the reduction of ratepayer costs in other ways that would have been uncharged if council were left to find a contractor to do that work. And just note the work you've done around the camping ground and looking to use local contractors in that work as well. So thank you for your time and energy and making that happen, and for being available today, and to Diane and Julie as well. It's a distance to travel and you've got other commitments as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Chamberlain, I'll jump to you.
Has Bathurst got a time frame about their time left there, or is it sort of...
They have, but it is commercially sensitive.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it's not far away.
Yeah. So they've obviously got no other outlets for their coal or anything like that. Like
No, not that. They would love to, but they haven't.
Thank you. I would like to just point out how important Tony has been there in his role, especially the fact that he's a local, he's been there a long time. He's straight shooting, nothing is too much of a trouble. He's never hesitated to put his hands in his own pocket for resources when we've been stuck. And though that goes unnoticed, it is very appreciated, Tony. And I can't think of a more suitable chair at this time when we've got plans for rehab of the Bathurst mine area, because there's no one with better possible local knowledge. So I am very grateful on behalf of the board that you are at the helm of affairs at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, and just adding to that, like all of our community boards, it's just becoming clearer and clearer the value that they bring to the community, and you've got a very good board out there as well, looking at the proactive stuff for the community and then that future focus. And it's I get reminded every day the value that we've actually got with our 69 elected members, and you play a very important role in that. So yeah, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
No further questions, we'll let you off the hook, but thank you very much for that presentation. And yeah, I know, like what Dean said, taking the time to come to a council meeting as well is really appreciated.
Thank you.
And we've had an apology from Chair Clarkson from the Adelaide board, but I believe Councillor Wilson will be... No, sorry. Just an apology. Was there anything that Councillor Wilson wanted to do, putting you on the spot from that board?
I guess one of the only concerns that the board's still got is just determining around Clonmacalloch Creek Bridge and Dome Creek Bridge, whether there's some potential hazards there that and I know the roading team in New South are going to come have a look and make that determination. But yeah, other than that, there's a lot of good stuff going on with the board, and happy to answer any questions if I can.
Yeah, gravel seems to be the big feature out there, and it's a work in progress. There's a few themes: Australian gravel and trees. And if no one's got any questions for Councillor Wilson, it might be a good time to break for morning tea. And I'm just going to adjourn the meeting.
You're going to move.
Oh, sorry, yes, we better move the recommendation of the Mayor's report. We can't leave that one out. I'll move that from the chair, seconded by Councillor Chamberlain. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Carried, and I'll just need to move that we adjourn the meeting. So I'll move from the chair that we adjourn the meeting. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. So we'll have a morning tea break now, and we'll come back at 11:10. Yep. Cool, well, welcome back everyone, and I'll reopen the meeting for item 7.5, which is the Over Island Wharf. And I believe we've got Simon, this is on 75, page 75 of your agenda, with the recommendations on 76. Over to you, Simon, thank you.
Thank you, good morning. So a few points I'd like to note. In this report, it's been going on a long time in terms of the discussions around Over Island Wharf. Councillors may recall that in around September last year we were talking about the need to potentially bring a paper back to council, a paper back to council around the future of the project. Since that time, we've had discussions with the Department of Conservation and the Hunter Family Trust. In late December, a proposal was put forward, or an intention to put forward a proposal, was discussed with the trust, and then in late January we received the proposal, which is listed out in those bullet points in paragraph 13. It's an option that that wasn't there, as you can see from the picture that's on under paragraph 8. Where we'd got to as a result of previous discussions is that Post Office Cove, or replacing the wharf in Post Office Cove, was unlikely to be possible, and so we started undertaking the investigations into Bathing Bay. What we have here is a proposal from the Trust to essentially take over the existing Post Office Cove wharf. They're not proposing to replace it with anything more substantial, but to continue to make improvements and repairs to the existing wharf and for its continued use. There is, as it says in there, the bullet points are high level, and there would need to be some more detail sorted out. But essentially, if council was to have these discussions with the hunters to reach some agreement, and ultimately to transfer the wharf, then they would allow, or continue to allow, the use of it for the commercial activity. But if council was minded to actually still build a new wharf in Bathing Bay, then the Hunter Family Trust would cease allowing commercial use of that wharf, so there wouldn't be competition. So there's still some options available in that proposal. We took a very similar paper to this to the Stewart Island Rakiura Community Board. What's that? 22nd, I think it was, of February. At that meeting, their board determined that they supported giving consideration to the proposal by the Trust. Now this paper is asking council if it do the same and endorse that. We had a couple of operators speak in the public participation. One was for it and was largely just seeking an extension of the closing time. So operators had previously been advised that the wharf would close on the 31st of March, so this month. But because Easter is early and there's still some good bookings there, they were seeking for that to be extended further, because we've now got the restrictions on that stop the larger vessels going in there, and we're down to the smaller water taxis. Councillor Spraggan, do you want to comment on any other discussions that are going on the island around this? It was largely supportive from the board and the discussions that we had.
Yeah, the board is certainly definitely in favour of it. As many of you know, and as Simon said, this has been going on for years. I've been on the community board there, as has the chairman, for 17 years. And in all those 17 years, Ulva Island's been wharf has been a discussion point, which come forward with possible solutions over the years. And every time we thought we were past the, go point, it was kicked back. Objections came in. This one's come forward from the Hunter family. They have met with Squirt and myself, plus council members. We've had extensive discussions with them. As has been said, the idea came from them. They're very positive to it. And for us, some members of the board have questions about the possible shifting of the wharf into Bathing Beach. Some of the operators believe that the wharf or the pontoon that has been designed could disintegrate in some of the weather that comes hurtling down the inlet. Although the designer has said no, that possibly couldn't happen, and he put his house up for us if it did occur. But the feeling amongst the community, I think, and definitely the board, is that if this can go ahead, it's positive. It means that Ulva Island has got wharf access. It's moving ahead, and it frees up capital as well, long term, for the development of the other wharf that we own that services Ulva Island, and that's the Golden Bay Wharf, which is also in need of urgent maintenance. So if we can get this one past the go point, with the cooperation of the Hunter family and with the operators, and it seems to be all positive there at the moment, then the board can concentrate on getting the other one ahead. We certainly can't afford to do the two of them. And that's the other thing, that if we have to build in Bathing Beach, the capital commitment for the island is still going to be very substantial. And people say the visitor levy, but what happens if the number of cruise boats suddenly drop coming to the island? And the amount of money going into the visitor levy fund, which we haven't got guaranteed access to, it's got to go before a committee. How do you service a loan? So for us, the option is definitely very positive, and we would certainly be supporting it.
There are some issues that are identified there. They're the ones that sort of sit in behind it, as just mentioned by Councillor Spragan. But I don't propose to go into those in any more detail at the moment. In a further report to council, I think we would have more of a discussion on those. There is a correction just in terms of the note that follows the recommendations. It should have said if the recommendation D is to support. Actually, sorry, the whole thing is a copy and paste error from the community board report. So it really is, if you agree to support, then that you direct the chief executive to get staff to engage. Apart from that, I think we'll leave it at that, and if there are any questions.
Thanks, Simon. I guess the standout kind of the issues component for me is the loss of that TIF funding if we don't go ahead, because I don't believe that'll be able to be transferred to the Golden Bay Wharf. So I guess the worst case scenario for us is we rebuild a wharf and Bathing Bay down the track if something happens, but we won't have access to that funding that we've already got. So I guess to me that's the only, if I'm looking at it pragmatically, the only sort of real loss that we get out of taking this forwards now. But is that accurate?
Yes, I think it's unlikely to be able to be transferred. And I think the other thing to remember is it's only 50% of it. So yes, it's part of the cost of a replacement wharf, but it's only a portion of it, and that assumes that prices haven't escalated to the point where it's actually more than that. Plus we've got the linking track that's required, which is 400 metres to take you from the wharf site to the current track network.
Yeah, I think the fact that that new wharf is being proposed to be built that is actually accessing someone else's land and all those issues that I won't go into now. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons that make this one quite favourable, I think. Councillor Chamberlain?
Well, that was part of my question around that, but I guess following on from that, it'd be worth applying or asking the question whether that money can be transferred rather than assuming that it's not, I guess.
Certainly we can do that.
Yeah, good suggestion.
I think it's a good example of finding a solution with the parties involved. I guess the detailed proposal for consideration, my thoughts would just be around the provisions of ensuring that public access going forward, whether that's having the Walking Access Commission involved in whatever's required there to ensure that that agreement with DOC and the Family Trust has that access remain. And then also just whatever provisions can be done to ensure that commercial operators, there's not any kind of exclusivity there, so just ensuring that commercial operators can continue to kind of have a competitive access to that, and future operators can still kind of have their opportunity to be involved as well. The only question I have would technically the Family Trust be eligible for applying to the visitor levy for maintenance and things like that? Is there anything within the levy policy that doesn't allow a family trust to apply?
Okay, as far as I'm aware, they are eligible, Councillor Keys.
Well, maybe that needs to be part of checking up.
I mean, it's not just council that can, it is available for
and it is for
any
tourism infrastructure.
And I think to your first point, and Simon may correct me, but I think the resource consent that's in place will address a lot of that as well, does it? Or?
So there's a few things there. I think in terms of the resource consent, there's a requirement for those structures that are in the coastal marine area to be available to the public. It doesn't necessarily mean commercial arrangements. My understanding, I think Karen was looking into this last week, is that for that type of infrastructure, they may not be eligible to apply to the visitor levy, but we will, we would clarify that. The other thing there is, whilst we can have those discussions around, they're obviously demonstrating an intent, but it was the same thing we said to the board at their meeting, which is if the decision is to sell it, then those management decisions and that control over it, they pass out of council and the board's hands. So this was, the wharf was owned by Southport previous to it coming to council. The decisions at that stage, I think STC had a role in managing it, but the asset is the asset of the owner. In terms of the access to the land, you can access the island from beach land, technically. You can access it from beach landings from anywhere else. Just in that particular location, it is on their private land, and it's their agreement with the Department of Conservation, and there is a clause in there which allows them to, I think with 12 months notice to say, no, that's not working anymore. They certainly haven't wanted to do that for about the last 100 years, but it is a clause that is in that, because there is no formal legal sort of in perpetuity easement that for public access across that land. It is by agreement with the Department of Conservation.
I guess that's my question of whether in this process there is the opportunity to explore whether with the Walking Access Commission that easement to ensure public access of the trail between the wharf and the conservation park can be retained in perpetuity. I guess in the process of the arrangement, whether there's that option, and rather than that, an agreement between DOC and the landowner having that independent Walking Access Commission kind of take the lead in that.
So discussions to date they don't want anything, any legally binding access agreement, which is also part of the reason why in the discussions for the Bathing Bay site we've said actually we would put the track entirely on DOC land to avoid those issues. So it's not to say, look, we can ask the question, but I'm just letting you know that the discussions to date would indicate that that's probably less likely to be an outcome. Sorry, Councillor Spriggan, you were...
No, I was just going to say that there's that complication with the wharf and the causeway being deemed now to be one structure, and it's historical, and the hunters are willing to take over that as such. The causeway alone was going to cost, if we upgraded it, it was going to cost us a lot of money.
It's a second step or a second stage to the project, because the causeway would have to be raised at some point as well.
Is that on road reserve as well? Coastal road reserve, whatever it is?
Yeah, it's on, part of it's on road reserve and part of it is in that, the CCMA under the new act. Not so new act now.
Cool. So we've got and I guess noting the fact that this has been through the community board and the important part that they've endorsed it. So we've got a recommendation there indeed that we agree to support or not support consideration of the Hunter Family Trust proposal, and if we don't support it, that we direct staff to determined by the CEO to engage with the Hunter Family Trust to prepare a detailed agreement for the board and council to consider. It feels like we're heading in the direction of supporting.
I would move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Can I just clear, is that, I thought if we agreed to support, then we don't worry about E.
No, if we agree to support, we do worry about E.
Yeah.
So that's different to the note.
It's different to the note, okay.
So it sounds like Councillor Spraggan moved. Do I have someone in a second? Councillor Running-Court. Any further discussion? I see Councillor O'Brien's got his hand up. Sorry, Tom, I didn't see you before.
Hey, thanks for the report, Simon. I guess it's heartening to see that there is good communication between the Hunter family and yourself. That's great stuff. In the report, I noted that a couple of commercial operators were potentially concerned about the relocation of the new wharf because they were worried about the access in terms of their vessels and so on and so forth. Do we have an idea, based on the statement of intent from not only ourselves, but also other stakeholders like DOC or the Hunter family, in terms of a cap of numbers of people on Ulva Island? And if we understood this, would that help to answer some of these questions before we get into a situation where we have to backtrack?
In terms of numbers, it has been raised that one of the points, and this is more between the Hunter Family Trust and the Department of Conservation, is just around the effect of increasing numbers. In terms of operators, it was more around the size of the vessel that was able to be berthed at the wharf, and the number of vessels that could be there at one time. The proposal that the hunters have got there is essentially to keep the existing restrictions in place, so that would keep it at the smaller sized water taxis and not the larger, I suppose the Zodiacs that come off the smaller cruise ships, but not the larger tenders or ferries or the larger boats that a couple of the operators have, and that is to protect the wharf. And I guess an effect of that is that potentially it keeps the numbers at a slightly lower level.
Okay, thanks, Simon. I've just got one more question. With regard to the Hunter family, in the event of the Hunter family taking over the ownership of the existing wharf, I understand we'd have to have some form of correspondence with Heritage New Zealand, and there would be caveats associated with that. The council would be liable for decommissioning the wharf, is my understanding, and there's obviously a serious cost associated with that. I just need to have a little bit more clarity over what Heritage New Zealand would deem to be the part of the wharf structure that would need to be protected. So is that the pre-1900 stone stack revetment work, or is it the actual physical wharf itself? And if it is the physical wharf itself, is there a way that council can, for the Hunter family, can take responsibility for saying, this is decommissioned, you cannot use it, but we don't necessarily have to, I guess, pull it apart and take it to bits and take it away. What are your thoughts around that?
That's exactly the discussion that we would have to have if no agreement was reached, the wharf is closed and we have to go down that track. We would be seeking to understand exactly what would be required. It could be as simple as taking the decking timber off and leaving the piles, or it could be something more substantial than that. We don't know at this stage, so we would be looking for clarity as soon as possible on that as well.
You happy with that, Councillor O'Brien?
Yep, thanks for that. Thank you.
Right, so the motion's been approved by John and Nagi. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Thank you so much. Okay, so 7.6 now, which is a water services update, which is on page 83 of our agenda, and I'll hand over to Chief Executive for this one, I believe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, this was written to just give Council an update on what the reform program was, and since it was written, NTU has also been disestablished and will cease to exist the 28th of March. We have a request into them for the information that we provided them and how they have collated it into the work program so that we can get back from the NTU their view of how it's done. It's just helpful to have those records. And the NTU has, as they go out of existence, they're trying to figure out how they're going to meet those official information requests. But it really was just to show that, just to make sure Council had a report to say these are the things that are happening, but they're happening so fast. It does also indicate that there's no, if you like, future plan other than Council being responsible. At this stage, we are anticipating being a month late with the LTP, but not going to. But Council has to resolve that, and then around the budget. So it's really just for information, and I don't have any more to add to what's written here, really. So happy to recommend.
No questions for Cameron at all? Would someone like to move that we receive that report? Councillor Baker-Aye, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you, Cameron. Okay, this now takes us to the public excluded part of our agenda. So we've got 3 items there, and I'm just going to read through the reasonings for each of those. So the first one is the Great South Draft Statement of Intent 24/27. And the reason for passing this resolution in relation to this matter is withholding of information is necessary to enable the local authority to carry on without prejudice or disadvantage negotiations, including commercial and industrial negotiations. The grounds under section 48 for this are that the public conduct of the whole or the relevant part of the proceedings of the meeting would be likely to result in the disclosure of information for which the reason for withholding exists. I believe the same one is for the one below with the Space Operations New Zealand Draft Statement of Intent. And also the Stewart Island Rakura Rising Main Wastewater Upgrade. So the reason for that, the withholding of the information is necessary to enable the local authority to carry on without prejudice or disadvantage negotiations, including commercial and industrial negotiations, and that the public conduct of the whole or the relevant part of the proceedings of the meeting would be likely to result in a disclosure of information for which good reason for withholding exists. So for those reasons outlined there, for those 3 reports, is someone happy to move that we go into public excluded? Councillor Case, do we have a seconder? Councillor Brunnclaw? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? That's carried. Thank you. You can do 36 slides in 28 minutes. There's a challenge. Yeah, welcome on. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. And hi, everybody. Behind me too. Nice to be here. So look, what I tried to do was flick that out, and thanks to Fiona for sending it hopefully through to you guys beforehand, because there is 36 slides, and it's just good to have as a bit of a reference point too. So the purpose is for you to understand how the implementation is going with the regional development strategy, and probably then to support your conversations around your mahi, how you would fit in that regional picture, because there's been a wee bit going on. So I guess the first point is to notice, oh no, I've sent you the wrong slide. Okay, I'll put this one. Look, the first point is probably to note that there's 4 ways that the plan is being implemented. So there's what other people are doing. So, that's non-Great South and non-council. There's the other just transition work streams. So remember, there's still another 6 work streams working at different levels, so from the work that Marahuku Regeneration is doing through to the business chamber with the engineering cluster. The third implementation approach is around Great South. So what we've tried to do is align what Great South is doing, particularly around the climate change mitigation work, net zero work that was in Beyond 25. And then the final area is around what I was doing. So I'm still seconded through to Great South to deliver some key priorities from the plan. And as you can see there, that's basically been my work plan for a year. So I'm halfway through, another couple of months to go. And I've got some very clear deliverables around housing and the regional data repository in particular. So I'm not sure with this slide. Yeah, so look, I'm just going to whip through a lot of this real quick because you've got it. But yeah, you're going to have a...
Just with housing, are you coming back another time in the near future to take us through the in-depth looking at housing, including the Airbnb issue? So that'll save us getting into that
exactly
now, but it'll be soon, will it not?
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge Teresa and Michael... Yeah, because and even Sam with the other work that you guys are doing. Like what we're trying to do is integrate your approach within that regional picture. Yeah. So I won't go into too much today, and I think you've definitely acknowledged the importance of housing. But probably for me, it's how it integrates into your planning and your provision of ubiquitous infrastructure in particular. So it's not just about getting more houses, it's about the quality of our homes and where they're located, thinking of now and in the future where our communities will live. Okay, so that's just a diagram which shows the approach. So when we've looked at implementation of the plan, we've really just tried to understand where can we touch things that no one else will be able to. So how do we endorse or empower things to happen, and often it is in the strategic planning or showing how all the different players fit into the jigsaw, which is what that diagram does. Okay, so this is about, with the new government, there's been a process to try to consolidate what we're asking for, or the things that might be decided at central government that will impact us at this level. So there's been a series of what we call regional ask documents, and they all come from the Beyond 25 plan, so we can be confident that what they say to start with is grounded in that research and consultation. But the 5 to 7 areas that we've been working on, and this has all been going through the, correct me Rob, the Enduring Oversight Group.
Committee.
Yes, so there's quite a few different players feeding in, which is fantastic. So the 5 or 7 areas are housing, energy, there's also tourism, water, transport, aquaculture and agriculture. I think we've sort of got it covered. So that's just an example of what it would look like, just from describing what the aspiration is for the region, what has happened in terms of the current state of play, and then overall support that we're asking for. And it's not just dollars, it's actually about understanding different bits of regulation or new funds getting set up and then how we connect in. That 4th column is quite important, and that's probably something we'll keep working on because we're trying to quantify the value. And what does that mean? What do we get from this level of support or this influence? Okay, so that's just an example of an action plan that we will have completed by the end of June. Again, just real quick with the housing update. as I said before, still very high priority for everybody. Of interest is that we've had a sneak peek at some of the immigration data that's come out from the last census, and only for Invercargill at this stage. I haven't had a look at you guys, but it does look like the ageing trend that we predicted is happening quicker than we thought. So what that means is, you know, the things that we brought up, we may not have as much time to actually develop approaches. That's just not confirmed, but it's just good to be able to, when we do get those results, we want to be able to get them in a way we can understand the trends very quickly. Okay, so we know about the barriers of housing with worker recruitment. So tourism has recovered really well, and we are definitely quite keen to keep working on solutions around how you balance, you know, maximising the opportunity of tourism, but at the same time, you know, it's got to meet local needs and workers. So how do you balance that? And I guess that last bullet point is very important, which is around that spatial planning, like I said before. Okay, so the second area was data. And again, remember from Beyond 25, we talked about the fact that there were lots of different data sets, and we just really wanted to make sure that the right information was informing the right decision making. So the main project that has come out of that is the regional data repository, which has external facing dashboards. So in terms of an update, we've allocated most of the $500,000 grant that we received from MB towards this project. We've been going through a tender process, and it was, I can't disclose too much information, but it was extremely well supported, and we're just going through the evaluation of a lot of those tenders at the moment, and in consultation with your council staff, by the way. And we have partnerships with central government too, because what we're trying to do with this is set up a system that gives us into the future a bit more structure around where our data is, how we interpret it, how we ensure that we get regular updates, it's real time. And to start with, we've just focused on 4 key areas: tourism, housing, environment, climate change, and regional facts. So regional facts is your basic stuff like GDP, population, workforce participation, etc. So that will all be done by the end of June. And I think the key is to work with the councils and other key stakeholders, because you guys as a council will be a user as well as possibly a supplier of data sets. You know, so we really want to look at how this all lines up. It's a great opportunity.
Is, with housing as a data set example, is that going as far as like LIM report information from council?
Yeah, we haven't got to that level yet of the data sets, so we're just going through the tender process, but it will probably be around things like demand, supply, affordability of housing. So we'll probably prioritise the data sets which are easily accessed at the moment, that because privacy is a high concern too, we want to make sure. And because we're being quite aspirational with the whole repository, we want to get what we call a minimum viable product developed by end of June. So that will give us the ability to add to it as we get new data sets or add bits, but it's just a starting point. Okay. Rightio, so this is just a diagram of how it works, but I won't go into that because you'll go to sleep. But pretty much it deals with structured, non-structured data, or closed and open data sets. Right, okay, so regulatory and planning, that was another area where Beyond 25 talked about trying to align the aspirations of regional development with the rules that will allow it to happen. And that was quite different to other regional development strategies that had occurred in the rest of the country. And it's actually been an excellent time to try and do this. So for example, with aquaculture, if there's a goal of achieving $1 billion from that industry, you know, I'm not saying you influence the rules, but the rules need to at least allow open ocean aquaculture to occur. So things like coastal plans, spatial planning, etc. So all we're doing is saying, look, there's a relationship here, the right data needs to inform same processes, etc. And that actually goes across a lot of almost everything in the plan. Energy, so look, we've still got the uncertainty around Tiwai Point, but there will be probably an update in the near future. I'm thinking of the lead-in period they need before they need to close down. The regional energy strategy is complete and the implementation approach is being confirmed. But I think energy is important not to silo because it overlaps so much with transport, agriculture and the mitigation or decarbonisation efforts. So that this is just something to keep in mind. Right, in terms of workforce, look, we've had to reevaluate this one because the government recently ceased the Regional Skills Leadership Group. So that ended end of February, and they were doing a great job with a lot of the work that had been happening around regional coordination. So we're just having a wee look at what that means, you know, and the role that Great South can play, but also the other players who are actually doing good work too. So how do we just bring that all in, consolidate it, and have just a wee bit of a reset? There's still like some really key issues. We're looking to the future to make sure we've got the right skills for new industries, but we're extremely focused on now. So our unemployment rate is still just hovering over 3%, but that's annualised. So if you do look at different parts or times of the year, you know, it can get as low as that structural baseline around 2.6%. Okay. Rightio, so aquaculture, this is another priority area. We don't really want to say something like $1 billion from aquaculture and then not have a pathway forward. So the pathway forward includes facilitating the regional aquaculture strategy. So Great South is an independent honest broker who can undertake that. There's no pecuniary gain or anything for Great South. And because there's going to be a lot of commercial, balancing of commercial interest and benefit with the rules, it's actually quite a complex position where we're at. So that means that we have tagged some funds towards the development of a brief which will outline the strategy, and then that will go out to market, so you'll get a suitably qualified person to deliver that bit of work. Right. Export. Okay, so export is very important and sometimes overlooked because the players in the export sector are very established and often have their own systems and support networks. However, what we talked about in Beyond 25 was just making sure that we understood from them what they needed to succeed. So they talked a lot about, you know, access to water, resilience in the transport network, you know, getting their products from a farm to a port. And that is really helpful to know. So there's a couple of bits of work that will happen linked to transport and water, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this particular one here talks about just talking to them about how they market and position their products, and then trying to understand if there's any regional alignment, you know, so how can we develop resources to support them? You know, is there a Southland type provenance story which could be a unique selling point for us to support them? And that would line up with the tourism positioning. Transport, so this is about just what I mentioned around, right, we've got all these aspirations, how do we make sure that our transport sector, including roading and freight, will actually enable our aspirations to happen. So we've got the Regional Land Transport Plan and we're having a wee look at that at the moment to line it up to Beyond 25. But as I said before, some of our larger exporters and businesses, it's really important that we understand where they fit too, because sometimes regulatory plans can sit out of their planning. And for example, the way that our two ports have strategic planning aligned with the Regional Land Transport Plan, we want to connect that better through an integrated transport plan. So you've got all four modes connected. Agriculture, I don't need to probably talk too much about this one. There's definitely a lot happening within government around regulatory, so that message has been heard very clearly. So last time I was here, I talked about the fact there was 20 pieces of regulation that the agriculture sector had dealt with over the past 6 years. So I think we'll just keep supporting the players in that area. So definitely doing some good work and making their voice heard. But I think too there's a lot there around land use diversification, enabling farmers with decision making. So that goes back to that regional data repository again, thinking about your freshwater plans and some of the big things that are coming up. So what we're saying is how do we help farmers or other people make decisions about, you know, their land and then comply with reporting and any other compliance that they've got. And the tools that we're looking at could support that.
Sorry, Bobby, is there any work being done on forestry? I mean, we've got a lot of trees here, so There is?
Yes, there's a wee bit going on. It's probably not a high priority for me right now because it's getting looked at within other parts of Great South, but I can definitely come back to you. Okay, last one I think, and then I'll be quiet, is water. So this is about ensuring that we have the data and the knowledge of not just our deep water aquifers, but level of replenishment, data about water that we need for spatial planning, but also data from the perspective of our large exporters and businesses and farms and manufacturers. So we want to do a bit of work in partnership with the councils and Environment Southland in particular that would look at current resilience and future resilience linked to the provision of assets. So quite different to regulatory water planning. You know, this is around trying to talk to people and understand what their current volumes are and potential future volumes, and then, you know, what they've got on plan and what they need to succeed. So there are conversations, and that plan would then be very useful to support other regulatory planning. That is in the RFP stage. We're just having a wee breather at the moment, trying to get the data and the housing sorted before we come back to that one. That's probably the third most important one for me. And that is it.
That was an under.
Yeah, I tried to go quick and you're all awake, so that's fine.
You can good at this.
No, would never say that. Anyway, thank you. Are there any questions or?
Thank you. Who are the businesses that you would have contacted, say, for the housing one, because that's the big one? So which businesses you speak of the large businesses? Can you give me a few examples?
In housing?
In housing, which are the businesses we've contacted?
Oh, so at the moment we've been more focused on getting the overall structure set up. So that's had a combination of our iwi, so for Runaka, there's the shareholders of Great South, which has the Tipu Kinga, the Licensing Trust, Community Trust South, and then the councils. Then the Great South role in the middle, then there's a working group, which has some developers on it. And then underneath there's some deliverables. So in terms of individual businesses we talk to, we haven't got to that stage yet.
We haven't gotten to employers who have, you mentioned a few, you know, tourism and other businesses wanting to. You don't have specific inputs from different businesses what they need.
We did through the Beyond 25 process. Yeah. So we had over, I think it was 470 odd businesses contributed to the business survey, and out of that, 52 or 53% indicated that housing was a barrier to recruitment. Mm-hmm. We can give you a little bit more rundown on that. Since then, Teresa and your team have been really good at, we've followed up that Te Anau work quite separately because it's where the tourism is where a lot of those housing conflicts are with the businesses. But it's a really good point because I think we need to go back because things have changed a lot since we did that work, which was May last year.
In some cases, the drivers of this 40% increase in building, increase in the wage all the way up, many of these are not particularly Southland issues, they're more legislative issues. The other thing, looking at the aquaculture strategy, and this comes to my mind, you know, there's this line about as an honest broker. How does one draw the line between your role, between looking after the general population and maybe after a few niche ones? Now, and I'll speak about aquaculture because when Grant Robertson, the erstwhile Minister of Finance was down there, he spoke to Great South, I believe, and he spoke about Sanford and Nahita needing help with the aquaculture strategy. If I look at Sanford, it's a $500 million turnover entity. It can do its own work. How do you draw the line between that what you are doing is not effectively just helping a few bigger players and is for the benefit of even the smaller guys?
Yeah, that's such an awesome question. So what I would say is we ensure a transparent and fair process. So we're very structured in terms of what the expectations and the deliverables of the strategy will be, the process, so ensuring you've got the right people inputting. And then in terms of the outcomes, you know, like the pathway to implementation. So what I'm saying is everybody that's involved in it gets a chance to feed into this piece of work. So it's not just a couple of big players. You know, it could be others that are involved in the supply chain, for example. So that's what we offer as an honest broker, that transparency of
a very fine line to tread, that you're not seeing it just lobbying for corporate interests and doing it for all of Southland, isn't it?
No, see, I feel quite comfortable because our policies and our documents support the structure. So I stand behind the RFP documents and and if you're just really clear at the beginning, around, right, this is what this work does, this is the process we're going to follow, and this is who's involved, I feel quite comfortable standing behind that. And yet there's some big players, but there's also some little guys that want a shot at it too. So, what does the infrastructure environment need to look like to help them? How does that link through to you guys and what you might look at with the coastal plan or your spatial planning? And it's bringing all that together is the role we play. Really good question.
Any further questions? Councillor Duffy, you?
No, I haven't, no. Oh, my usual thing. Just talking agriculture, I noticed somewhere, apparently lamb's selling in Britain now for £7 a kilo. And I know you're not doing lamb marketing, but would be great if we could improve the profitability of what we do so well. And of course, I've gone about wool all the time as well. But when we're talking about land diversification, I think we've got to be careful that we don't underestimate the potential of what we already do very, very well. That's all.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think at the end of the day, a farmer will choose what they do with their land, and they'll do what they want. So all we can do to influence that is give them the data or access to the data or support their decision-making processes for farmers. The challenge is going to be at scale with a lot of these opportunities, which is why we're looking at the export sector and trying to understand the enablers around that, because that then, there could be opportunities to put multiple littler things together, and then you get a bit more scale, becomes more financially viable. Yeah. Okay.
What I like about this, and I said it in my council video yesterday, but this isn't just a plan, this is a plan that's actually being actioned and being followed up and continually being done. It wasn't just completed a few months ago and sitting on a shelf, so it's good to see, and thank you for providing the update and keeping us in the loop, because it's good to see the work progressing for a live document, so thank you.
Thank you, and just to acknowledge your staff as well. There's been quite a bit of work that they've supported to get to this next stage, so it wouldn't work if we couldn't try to embed it or integrate it alongside the councils, and same for Environment Southland too. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
That concludes that workshop. I'll just wait for us to go offline.
It's working. Am I driving this as well? I'll just take over for just a moment and just load the maps that work.
Yeah, have this over to here. And you might be able to see.
A little slider.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the slider. Just make sure it's working. Alright, I'll just kick off. Just ignore the presentation at the moment. So today, Mikkel and I are here just to chat to you. We wanted to just highlight the engagement that staff have undertaken on the representation review and give a quick summary of the community feedback that we received. From the community feedback, we've also gone through and developed some options, which you will have seen in the documents we provided, and we're keen to get some feedback from this group on those options. So you'll be aware that the purpose of the review is just to make sure that the communities in our district are fairly and effectively represented, and we have to do a representation review every 6 years. So we are due to do one. All right. I'll keep going. Keep going. So as part of the review, you will remember from some of the workshops we had last year that we have to look at where the communities of interest are in our area, and then also how these communities can be effectively represented, and also look at the fairness test, that plus or minus 10%, making sure essentially that for subdivisions and wards, people are representing about the same number of people. We'll just keep going on too. So you'll remember that there's been some additional principles that Council endorsed, and those were the ones that were suggested by the elected member working group, and then we came to you and you also supported them. So that was the importance of local decision making, ensuring there's effective working relationships, having consistent representation for people in the district,
and having a structure that attracts the right people to governance roles. And the last one was to be cost effective, but not it has to be kept in balance with all the other considerations as well.
To see the council experiences some of the frustrations when
The tech's quite hard to get going. So.
See it. Because this is the problem we have on the island every time they try to communicate with us.
you can take, we've read all the information.
We just had some.
It's being recorded.
Oh, yes, it is. We just had some wonderful interactive maps that was a really great way to show the changes. So I guess, yeah, we really did. Can you make it live?
Yes.
Okay, I think Monique can just edit a setting. Are you still okay?
Yeah, I'll just.
Matt, you had a question?
I had a question that I thought of after the work last week, but you know those statistics mesh blocks that we were looking at, is that based on current data? Like what census?
We're using the 2018 census data, and that's the 2023 release, is that right?
Yes, estimated.
Okay, so it is up to date.
It's very specified which statistics information we have to use.
To be within that legislation requirement. Okay.
The local government commission have set exact, the exact set we have to use. So as you'll be aware, we're just in the process of leading in to develop initial proposals. So after we seek feedback from you today, we're planning to go to seek feedback from the community boards on the 4 options, and then report back into council on 17 April, and we're planning to present the 4 options formally in that report, and also it'll be an information paper. It will have all the feedback that we received, and it's also going to just outline for council's information what we're intending to present as the initial proposal before we do that in May. So it's possible some of the dates in the latter half of this timeline might alter if necessary to deal with the change in the LTP dates, but these are this is what we've been working on to date, and will be adaptable as required, but still make sure we meet our legal requirements. So, engagement. Do you want to cover this?
So we engaged with the community through a public survey, with community boards through workshops and a survey, and then with relevant stakeholders being Active Southland, Community Trust South, sorry, move to the next slide there, Environment Southland, Southland Multicultural Trust, Fieldland Business Association, and then an internal staff, Hui. We also researched using the building team data and commuter walker, which tells us movements between different areas. The community boards had an incredible depth of local knowledge that helped us identify communities of interest and any changes in those communities. They generally supported the current structure, but suggested some small boundary changes which are detailed in option 2. They were supportive of current numbers and of both elected members at community board level and at council level, and as I said, supported the current ward and community board structure. The public survey, we got 50 respondents to that. They voiced that local representation was important and a strong value in community boards. And the community groups and stakeholders also helped sort of affirm to us that, you know, it's a large district with distinct communities, which of course we know. They largely supported the current structure and valued the community boards particularly as points of contact throughout the district. That's probably a really quick overview of the engagement and the feedback we sought. If you had any specific questions, just shout out. Is the website going?
Just make public.
You've got the options anyway in your handout.
Probably look at option. Oh, it's live, Monique.
Partially.
Partially. We can start talking about option 1.
Are there any questions? You've been leading some of this work. Have you got any?
The girls are covering it off quite well. Presumably everybody's read the information that was on the hub. Just receive feedback on
So we don't have to take you through the options if you're familiar with them. We've put out some pretty strong, analysis on communities of interest, effective and fairness. I mean,
Maps are quite cool.
I think maybe, just
If you've got the tech working, then you might.
Yeah.
so obviously the first option's status quo. We probably don't need to go into that too much. You know the structure. We got feedback that it's still a reasonably sound structure. As you'll see from option 2, some tweaks have been proposed to reflect communities of interest. Here we go.
Here's option 2. Let's just take a moment to load.
It was a blank.
It's a great option. Look at that. I think it's just loading. Nothing today.
There's kind of a theme coming through that people generally happy with the way things are, and also there's a bit of a risk in tampering with it now, given it's reasonably new. And I think some of what we've seen today, just the presentation from the community board chairs, is just how successful they are.
You're starting to see that.
Okay, so we'll just move on to some of the tweaks that we talked about in option B, just to give you a bit of.
While it's loading.
Oh, is it still loading?
It's loading, but you can talk about, do you want to talk about option 2 and the tweaks?
All right. So yes, in option 2, which is just essentially status quo with a few tweaks, just to identify some small community of interest, amendments that were suggested to us. So there's obviously moving Drummond, which we just had a reasonable amount of feedback that Drummond might sit better in the Arete board and community board area. So that's a suggested change, and we've done a bit of work to identify exactly how much of those mesh blocks to capture, even since our working group meeting. The second week. Did you show it on the map?
No, the maps are not loading. So Nokamai Road is the second tweak.
So that's just right up the Nokamai Road. There was just one aspect of that was.
Oh, look, it's working.
Here we go.
Partially working.
Sitting with Ardlasser when the access to that road was completely within the northern community board area, so it made sense to move that segment over. Otama Valley Road, Anglian Island Road. That's in the Hokanui Hills, and it's currently sitting within Ardlasser, but feedback was that area might gravitate more towards the Arete area, and uses obviously the Gore area as one of its communities of interest too. And other wee tweaks is the Taramoa area, which is just right by Wallace-town. The possibility of moving that over to the our Aparima ward and Oraka Aparima community ward. And lastly, the Waikana Road and Munro Road, which is sitting right up near Nightcaps up there. There were a couple of particular roads that the community board really felt actually gravitated towards Winton and should sit within the Arete, Hokanui, is it? Areas. So it was also discussed whether to change the membership of the community boards. There's 2 particular boards where there's more councillors in the ward, but only one of them sits within sits on the community board. So that's the Waharopai Toitoi board and the Arete board, and whether there should be a change to the number of councillors on the board. So there's been mixed sentiment about that. So it's within the proposal for that option 2. I mean, the working group thought that it was right as it is, which was interesting feedback. Didn't propose a change, but keen to hear feedback from this group. So maybe we should have a bit of a discussion on option 2, whether there's a comfort in those suggested tweaks. Any thoughts on that board representation issue around having more councillors on those 2 boards? Is there any feedback that provides?
I can understand the concerns that it feels like that the other councillors can outweigh that community voice. I think I guess I've got experience of one board, but the opportunity to have speaking rights allows that influence to go across. and it probably depends to an extent on the chair and the other community board members. Is making all feel welcome, then there's wee things like when you're included or excluded from emails that are going around can make you feel either included or excluded. But you can see in other situations it can work really well. It's probably would be good to get a comment from those councillors who are on a board about how they would feel about having 3 councillors on there as opposed to 1.
I'd probably value it in my board. Might change some decisions. Few extra votes.
Yeah.
What do you support? Because like we're the ones that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you probably feel like the fifth wheel when you're not part of it, sort of thing. I can understand the dynamics of having more councillor votes. I thought those reasons, that were given in the report for having the councillor input was quite good, but it, with, as Christine says, with the speaking rights, you can still put across your point of, your thoughts or your knowledge on a certain thing. It's not, I wouldn't go in a ditch over it either way. Yeah.
So my question actually was, do we actually need a councillor? You could just have one appointed to the board, not as a voting member, just as someone to provide input. Do we actually, then it is a community-based thing. But yeah, there's a bit of feedback that maybe that wasn't.
Is there regulation that requires the councillor to have voting rights on the community board? Unless I'm just going to vote with whatever the community wants, unless I know from a council perspective there's a reason that they're misinformed or don't have the full detail on something.
Community one might be subjective.
Having that ability to give context and conduit to the council table and discussion, but the actual voting provision is kind of an awkward one to have. In contrast, on the Northern Board, where Tom's the appointed councillor with the voting right, at the discretion of the chair, I've been able to show up and kind of give a council report based on, I guess, my knowledge of living in that community board area, even though I'm appointed to a different community board area as a councillor. So I feel my vote doesn't really matter on the board that I am on. And then what is quite valuable is being able to come in as a councillor with some, at the discretion of the chair, having speaking rights at the board that I'm actually affiliated with.
So it is an area it would be quite interesting to hear from the boards on as well in our next round of engagement.
In the past, we've had an extra councillor come to the island, been invited several times, but other times asked if, and it was Abel Kramer, asked if he could come down and speak with us because he knew he had valuable information on what we were talking about. So he came and shared the information, but didn't vote. But it was really good to have him present.
And there, and like Paul said, so you feel like the fifth wheel, but you see, I don't see it like that. I see it that that's the community speaking, and it's like going to any community meeting, and actually speaking as the councillor with a little bit more knowledge or oversight of what is going on than maybe the general public know. And the same would apply for the community boards, that you can give the council perspective, but like you say, at the Northern Board, you don't get to vote, but you've still had input and given the information or directed the information if there's something that's off from what you know. So yeah, there's that debate as to, I think it's important that councillors are welcome at the community board, but the debate would be, other than having speaking rights and being there hearing from in the capacity of hearing from the community boards, is it necessary that we're voting?
Well, I think it is actually, because I sort of witnessed examples where, and I mean, the other thing is the community board, sure, they represent the community, but there's a whole lot of people in the community that actually still contact the councillor, and so the councillor gets that wider perspective and also has that wider perspective of what's happening here. And I can think of some cases where there's a thing sort of 50-50 split with a group trying to do something, And I think that councillor input is valuable.
Yes, and there's various options. I think Darren sitting on the Arete one, you're the actually only member from Winton itself on that board, and that's representing, 1,000 people. Whereas that would be absent altogether.
Well, it's pretty close to Winton, like literally
Yes.
300 metres past the edge of the town, but yeah.
So that could be seen to be a matter as well for consideration. Also, if you had, say, 3 councillors in areas where there are 3 all members of the board, but perhaps there's only 1 vote. I don't know how you work that out, but I think it's important to consider that weighting, the weighting difference that will occur, because you've only got 1 in some areas, but 3 I think is quite a dominating influence.
I think 1 councillor, 1 vote in each ward. For me, my community starts at Winton, at Arete, where I stood, and I appreciate being able to go to and speak on behalf of my community through those speaking rights. Some challenging moments, but I'm still going to step up and be in my community, and I think Arete with 3, we've got a substantial base. My phone is going all the time, not in about a lot. So I wouldn't want to see any reduction in the councillors, and then everyone puts different time into their roles too. So we'll see what comes. It'll be interesting to see what the community boards say about their councillors and what they want representation at community board meetings.
So is there any other feedback on suggested tweaks that the other ones, like Drummond or
Shift?
I think Drummond's a great idea. They tend to come our way. A lot of people actually said to me during both election processes, how come we are. And I can see Munro Road.
Same with the Munro one too, that they associate
that way
towards Winton, not across the other side of the river.
So Otapiri Mendeville Road, what's going on with that? Because Otapiri Laura seem to be one spot.
When the community board, Ardlassa, was doing kind of the mapping exercise of communities of interest, it was almost like a surprise to the community board that Valley Road was part of Ardlassa community.
So is it from Overton's grants or?
Down through to Manville, basically.
So then when you talk catchment groups, and you're talking the catchment of that area, where would you place Otapiri? Because Otapiri is placed in the Mekarewa headwaters catchment.
Well,
So I'm coming from the other side of it as well.
Otamita is a tributary of the Mataura, so that end of it is, technically part of that catchment. But as far as the Ardlassa board were concerned, anyone that lives in that lower part of Otapiri, Mandeville Valley, and Otamita Gorge area.
So are you talking grants on this? Do you know the names of the farmers?
No.
I think probably we won't go into too much detail, but I think it's really important.
The thing is that change isn't working on that.
I think Otamita's
Change hasn't loaded, so would you like me to talk through what the proposal in this option 2 is?
Tell me later about it, I'm fine with that, but
I was just going to add that generally with the community boards coming back and just identifying some of those areas where it might be important to that community to go to another area, it's just kind of part of the forming stage of that representation review change, and they should be quite adept at feeding back where that community of interest is.
Feedback from the Ardlassa. We're going to take these suggested tweaks back to them with the mesh blocks and everything that we make sure we're accurate.
And
On that side of the hill rather than that side of the hill.
Shift the hill.
I'm sure Otamita's more part of the eastern side than.
The proposed tweak here is not loading, but it is to move this road, Otapiri Mandeville Road, and part, or is it all of Otamuta Valley Road? The line kind of goes across here like this, to move that into Arete.
On the wee map up there, that's the change, isn't it? So it goes up.
Yeah.
Have these proposed changes been spoken about to the community boards that are either might stand to gain from that change?
That's our next step. To them all,
It's a chance to Margie forward.
Because they will know.
The good guys probably where the kids go to school.
We've looked at all of those routes.
Okay, we might just come back to what else are you looking for from discussion?
I don't know, do you want me to, I mean, you would have looked at the next two options. One was just reducing the number of boards, and there's two ways that was suggested, and the last option was that moving Wallistown into the different ward and community board area. The working group again felt less in favour of these options, probably after your sentiment on those as well. If there's anything you want to clarify, just ask us. But if there's any feedback you have, or
Personally, I would agree. You know, it's a big change that occurred, 6 years ago, and I think some of that's still getting embedded as well. To go and change it again is probably going to have its own repercussions that might outweigh the advantage of leaving it as it is.
Is that the general sentiment in the room? Because that's something we'll probably say to the boards, because if we take all four options, we'll probably give them a bit of a feeling about the sentiment around this table when we do that. So, yeah.
Well, I remember 6 years ago there was some thought that it would be justified to have Wallistown still on its own. But there was this concern that if we did that, we might weaken ourselves with another area that somebody was sort of knocking on our door and was scared that they might try to get out the same route. So it was thought to be a bit tighter.
It was an interesting process. It was.
So the Local Government Commission looked at it last time about whether they kept it by itself, made it a bigger area, and quite a few considerations, and landed at the Makarewa subdivision of the Reti wards.
Right.
But then you're bringing a whole lot of other areas besides just Wallistown into that in order to address a feeling.
Yeah, and it's not
what is a small community.
A big area of feedback that we'd had, and it would alter all of our ward structure and all of our fairness test calculations. Okay. Do we need anything else? Is there anything we've missed? Probably is.
The comment from last week's meeting of the working group discussed the possibility of reorganisation. Looking at the options of unitary authority, and I think that came out of just discussion from some of the beyond 2025 recommendations and how to align things in the future. But I guess since being involved in this and reading all of that Future for Local Government recommendations, trying to understand what does investigating something like that look into. I know there was discussion of like a poll or a petition provision or something. So is there any information that can come? It's not an option necessarily, but can there be some more information supplied around how does that information go out to the community boards who, based on that room and discussion last Monday, I've been very careful to say the words, it seems there's an appetite out there. But 18 months into this now, I'm starting to go, I'm almost confident to say there is an appetite based on the anecdotal conversations, but no one seems to know where to start with it. So I've gone away myself and read part 3 of the LGA and Schedule 3 and, see the provision, but I'm no expert at it, but...
If that's something they're interested in, we could definitely look into it.
I mean, I don't want to say based on my view of it, but I'm just putting an ear to the ground, and it seems that I'd be too nervous to say, oh, here's what I think. But if from hearing that many people in a room be like, oh yeah, lots of the community are talking about it, then the question needs to be put out there.
Something we can provide information on, circulate it. All right, so our next steps are to have the same sort of conversation with the boards, and we'll report back some of their feedback in April to this group and sort of outline what we're intending to be our initial proposal, just to make sure that there's a degree of comfort and to make sure that we're progressing accurately as well.
It's good, because it was at least one board who didn't discuss the representation. You at all? Was there more than one or just
two did the survey?
Yeah.
Reti and Stewart Island. Were provided with a a survey that was somewhat similar to the discussions that would have been held at a workshop, and maps
And you got a good reply.
Yeah, we did, definitely.
It's important they have an opportunity for the face-to-face discussion, because that kind of people ping off each other in terms of the discussion, don't they?
The discussions have been fantastic with the community boards. So
No, we did have it, although they weren't present, we did actually have a good discussion.
Oh, right.
Over options and things, and it was a good questionnaire.
we did go to the boards before that too, just to present the process, and spoke to them each before we went for that engagement session as well. So hopefully they're well informed. We've been definitely putting effort in.
Yes, it wasn't as if you weren't prepared to go and have that discussion.
We weren't prepared to have them.
Thank you. Any other questions? You've got enough of a steer, and the process sounds good and up there, so thank you for your work around that.
Apologies for the technology.
And that's us for